not many have had a more underappreciated or interesting career as Paul Schrader. To your average filmgoer, the writer-director is probably most well known for writing the gripping tale of a socially reclusive cab driver in Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, and continuing this partnership with Scorsese with Oscar acclaim with the film Raging Bull. But Schrader's impact on cinema shouldn't just stop there, as he has quite the rich history of filmmaking credits, not just as a writer, but in the director's chair as well. A hugely stylish director, many would debate painfully so, he saw great success through the 70s into the 90s, creating stories that uniquely captured film noir for the post-Vietnam generations, frequently depicting troubled men and women, always on the edge and being exposed to the darkest aspects of humanity. You know, your quiet cab drivers, your charming gigolos, your haunted paramedics, your existential drug dealers. Nah, seriously, look up his work. It's much more expansive than you think. However, even to those who followed his work closely, I think most can agree he struggled to capture that lightning in a bottle and took a bit of a downturn at the start of the 21st century, with many financially and critically unsuccessful ventures, leading to a career killer, a series of films. However, failing to call quits when many directors would have, he remarkably found success in 2017 with the psychological drama First Reformed, which has reinvigorated his career and brought back Schrader's cynical voice to the masses of modern filmgoers. While I appreciated First Reformed and some of its jaw-dropping imagery, I'm not here today to discuss that. However, I wanted to talk about a film that went a little bit underappreciated when it came out, and one that left a much more profound effect on me. His 2019 film, The Card Counter. Granted, I will admit its flaws and will claim its melodramatic style will not be for everyone, but I feel it's a hugely underappreciated film that explores some compelling ideas that Schrader first explored all the way back in his most recognizable screenwriting work, Taxi Driver. The mind of a lonely man in a troubled world. But before we delve into the video, let me lay the cards out on the table and thank you guys for the support of this channel so far. I really love the feedback and it makes me so excited for doing more videos. Really do love talking about movies and sharing this passion of mine, and just to hear you guys getting excited about it, sharing this love too, it just means the world to me. Let me say you have got the right hand of cards by clicking on this video. You're going to win big with this one. Remember to leave a like and press that subscribe button if you want to see more. Warning, there will be spoilers for this film, so please know this before watching it. So I can partly blame the lack of attention of this film on the way it was advertised. I'll admit, it was terrible. I mean, look at this. This poster just screams video on demand and chuck it in the back of the Netflix database. It looks like Oscar Isaac is in one of those cringy, by the rules, rags to riches stories with insufferable dialogue that feels like it's a lot smarter than it actually is. But boy, is this film far from that at all. What if I said this film was actually a grim portrayal of US capitalism and is a concerning portrayal of war veterans who come back home psychologically damaged and without purpose? So yeah, familiar territory to Schrader, like the one that first put him on the map, Taxi Driver. Back when that film came out, America was just coming out of the wreckage that was the conclusion of the Vietnam War. Soldiers were finally leaving a decade-long conflict that for many transformed them into men. Boys who had been thrown into a scenario of great peril with no guidance of their parents and loved ones, having to hang on to their newly made mates, having to come to terms with the gripping reality of their situation. The character in Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle, represents one poor soul left emotionally scarred from the aggression and violence of combat that's now been flung back into society that he fought so hard for, that is now being swallowed up by degeneracy. While a clearly unhinged protagonist, there is a level of sympathy for Travis, and as an audience we have to sit uncomfortably as Travis fills his days with incredibly antisocial behaviour. Schrader famously said that Travis was the byproduct of himself going through a dark place, drinking himself to death as an angry youth who was desperately alone in a crowded city. To an extreme extent, granted, but it's interesting how these seeds erupted into a crippling view of a US veteran who is by clinical terms insane, and feeling he's the remedy to the seedy city's problems. This would be a theme that he would continue to explore throughout his career, and after a turn of unsuccessful films, finally going back to this concept. It's kind of depressing when you think about it that Schrader is talking about the very same things he was discussing 50 years ago. Sure, the political environment and issues we're now facing are completely different, but still the degeneracy and immoral actions of human society still permeates, and still those lonely souls that are still being eaten alive by it. According to Paul Schrader, The Card Counter is a part of a semi-trilogy of movies that he started with First Reformed and concluded with this year's The Master Gardener, with the overarching theme of lonely men that society takes for granted: the priest, the gambler, and the gardener, who all are faced with unquestionably dark turns in their beliefs and how they turn into emotionally unhinged avengers in this troubled world. The Card Counter, however, is the most haunting one for me and can be broken down into many layers. It's certainly not vague in what Schrader is talking about, sometimes to a painfully obvious degree. But it's fascinating the dilemma that he brings up about the gruesome reality of some servicemen living with the thought every waking moment of their past horrible deeds. Some would say good, let him suffer. But where can a man go who has committed abhorrent things to people? And should we be more critical of the institution that trains these servicemen into becoming monsters? The film certainly goes for the hanging fruit when it comes to morally questionable individuals. Our protagonist, Private First Class William Tilch, was trained in enhanced interrogation techniques and practiced it in Abu Ghraib. Those who need a historical reminder, this is the time US Army and CIA operatives committed a series of human rights violations against detainees kept in overseas detention centres during the Iraq War, a lot of which I can't really show or really recommend you look up, but take my word for it, it will haunt your dreams for the next week. Due to these revelations, William is sent for 8 years to military prison along with a crew of men found in a photograph linked to the war crimes. But the culprits and institution who train these emotionally damaged men get off scot-free. Meanwhile, these men that now have to live with the fact of their crimes and descend into patterns of constant debauchery to handle their past misdoings. This metastasizes into alcoholism and family abuse. They're then the final out. For Will, he doesn't have the gumption to end his own life, as he instead soaks his days in gambling at roulette tables, playing safely and anonymously. William is a tortured soul, and while his gruesome origins are not immediately announced to the audience, Oscar Isaac clearly presents a person who is forgotten by most people and left in his pattern of misery, forever engaging in a game of chance and thrill, but for which Will shows no real excitement for. It's fascinating to see with the amount of scenes we see him gamble and win, he never looks thrilled with his time. As he says, he's just passing the time. He leaves out the doctrine to bet small and win modestly, just so he can avoid attention and go about his day. He never stays at the casino accommodation, always living close by and even going to the extent of wrapping all his motel's furniture in white garb. I suppose one reason I find his character tragic is my experience with gamblers in my own life. Now, I'm not here to hate on you if you do enjoy a bit of a gamble. Hey, everyone has their vices. But when it comes to the world of gambling, I'm a bit of a Paul Schrader on the subject matter. Kids these bloody days. Having worked the halls of pokie machines and roulette tables, I've seen the life drawn out of very smart, competent people with the flashes of gambling success, living in the most densely populated gambling machine city in the world. Let's just say the place that I call home has a pretty bad gambling issue. So my views on gambling are already pretty bleak, but it's especially sad to see veterans of all people being sucked into this world. But what especially haunts me about this film and the way it's depicted is an especially tragic fact. Now, the following statement is my own interpretation of what the film presents, so it's totally fine if you don't feel this way. But I have to say, Schrader, I feel, shows no difference between the military service and the investors of successful gamblers in how they exploit people who need help. Will is a young rookie who gets drafted in by Willem Dafoe's Major John Gordo, who sees potential in the young boy to be a cold, calculated interrogator who shows no mercy and will do anything to get answers. Years later, after having suffered the interminable prison conditions, Will returns to the world, and La Linda, played by Tiffany Haddish, represents a group of investors who back gamblers for a portion of their winnings, and clearly sees money potential in Will and drafts him in. Yes, Will willingly accepts both positions, so he has only himself to blame, but I really feel this film draws comparisons with both worlds. While La Linda may not have as devious intentions as the psychotic Gordo, and in the film she is framed as a sort of love interest, she's still exploiting Will to gain some reward. What a frightening thought that is. Will is a broken man who is a pawn for others to use. Much like in Taxi Driver and, yes, First Reformed, Schrader sees the only hope of salvation for these damaged people are in the young, and he does this again in Card Counter, where he has Will temporarily escape his self-destructive life to work alongside a young man who he hopes to impart wisdom on and get him to start a living. The young man, played by Ty Sheridan, has to deal with a lot in his youth: an alcoholic, abusive father, a mother who walked away from him, huge credit card debt, university debt, and simply one motivation to wrong the man who betrayed and killed his father. I suppose Will sees a lot of himself in the boy, and hence why he decides to act as a teacher and guardian for him, and to give life and purpose to a person who has also directly been affected by the actions of the military-industrial complex that destroyed and ruined so many lives. So yeah, it's a pretty political film. My only problem, and one which Schrader I feel has been suffering from for quite some time, as it does come across a little bit like an old man complaining about the world. There are some incredibly cringeworthy pieces of dialogue that show Schrader a little bit out of the loop when it comes to modern day technology and how things work these days.
Hey, you ever been on Google Earth?
Where's that?
That's where I was when I was waiting for you. It's amazing. Look, you can enter any place in the world. It comes right up. Street view. Look at that.
It just comes off as like your grandma just learning how to use email. That being said, Schrader I feel makes some very valid and pertinent points about the abuse of command and uncompromising treatment of criminals in society, stripping them slowly of their humanity, and by the end of the film forcing them to succumb to more aggressive means in order to survive. I haven't even touched on the technical merits of the film, which adds to the suffocating tone of the film. While not the most cinematic, it's certainly less impressive than the gorgeous First Reformed, there's a real coldness to the way this film is shot. Of real interest to me is how the flashback scenes in Abu Ghraib are shown as nightmarish dreams where the fisheye lens distorts the shots to make for some truly horrific moments. The car counter was a visceral experience for me. I admit it has its problems and it has more to do with Schrader's style of writing, but I also admit there's no one quite like Schrader in the department of cynical cinema, and I think this film was a real showcase of that. It is sad that Schrader still feels the need to explore lost souls in a world of depressing values, but like the reason Will helps Ty Sheridan's character, there is a little hope of teaching what's worth fighting for in this life and learning to never go down the path of vengeance and hate, a path that Will, by the end of the film, brings him back to the same claustrophobic place he ended up leaving. Because you might leave jail, but does the jail ever leave you? Sorry, that sounded a lot cooler on paper. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. If you like smart character pieces akin to Taxi Driver, or are just generally a fan of Paul Schrader, then yeah, definitely check this film out. It comes highly recommended. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope that was informative. If you saw this, tell me what you thought. Did it leave you with the same kind of uncomfortable feeling? Or did the melodramatic style put you off as well? But yeah, just remember to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, wishing you all well. Up and onwards.